You know what it is. Hold on. Let me start that, run that back. You know what it is. I'm Parlay Hunter. This is a bro podcast. And we got my man Obah in the building. How you doing, Obah?
Yo, I'm good, man. I'm very happy. My team is winning games, and I'm excited. I'm excited for this playoffs and this next team. So yeah, man, glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Obah, lifelong Knicks fan, DJ in New York City. You probably seen
hmm
him if you've been around the city, whatnot. I gotta say, what is this feeling? I gotta ask, what is this feeling for a Knicks fan that's been for a lifelong Knicks fan? What is this new type of feeling? How is this, bringing the type of emotion that's coming out of you? Because obviously there's been a lot of heartbreak, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and we were talking earlier how it's a different feeling than it was last year. And last year felt, the rumblings were there and you could see something, and then now it's a different type of electricity. Tell me how you feeling right now.
Yeah, man. I feel like this Knicks team is giving me some of the similar feelings I had back in the mid '90s. Watching like Ewing and Starks and Oakley and Mason. Rest in peace, Mason. Um, that team was very blue collar, do whatever it takes, grind it out, tough nose defensively. And when I look at this current Knicks team, there's a lot of similarities, in different dynamics. But I think what makes a lot of New Yorkers love this team is for similar reasons to like the team that I just mentioned, and they're clicking at the right time. They've dealt with injuries like all NBA teams, miss guys at different parts of the season. And, right now New York is missing Randall, but we're still getting it done. And I think the chemistry and the camaraderie that they have, the personalities that they have, Tibbs as the coach, it's the right fit. And, hey, let's ride it as long as we enjoying this and they winning games and everybody's happy.
So it feels like a actually to me like a new dynamic. But when you go to compare it to last year, what do you see as the biggest like improvement? You know what I mean? Like as far as like what they were lacking before and what they're better at now, or even got better at.
I think from what I see, players are finding their comfort zone a little more, I think, this year compared to last year. You know, you add a player like Bogdanovich and Burks. McBride has sort of come into his own this year as a reserve. Brunson has just gotten better. Josh Hart. I just feel like they added a couple of nice pieces, and guys that were there from last year, leftovers, are just gelling a little better and finding their roles and being comfortable in their roles.
Right, right. Okay, so to bring the euphoria down to earth a little bit, because you just spoke on that and how these other guys are picking it up. McBride had a big game in that. And now, for people who are listening to this, we just watched the first two playoff games where they beat the 76ers. And so we're riding high right now, if you whether you catch this today or tomorrow or next week. But as as we see with Brunson these first two games and these other guys picking up the slack, are you worried? Is there any worry about Brunson? Because you do see them getting the double team on him right now in these playoffs. Last year, he had, with his playoff performances, it's like, I got to ask, do you feel like for the rest of these playoffs, are teams going to focus in on Brunson? Are they going to be double teaming him? And does that worry you if they take out our best player in the game? Or, you know,
I'm not worried. A part of me feels like, Brunson, he might be a little tired from all, the big dynamic games that he had throughout the year. I wonder if fatigue is a factor for him, but his ability to impact the game in other ways, his leadership, and because he's still a threat, teams have to honor him. And yeah, if he's being doubled, kicks it out to Josh Hart or DiVincenzo, and other guys are stepping up. I think as long as he's on the floor, showing his leadership qualities, and still, I mean, Yeah, he's had off games, but he still dropped 20, 22 last night, and I forget what he had in game one, but he's still getting some buckets. He's just not as efficient as we're used to seeing him. But I'm not worried because I think he'll come into his own, and as long as the Knicks keep winning in spite of it, it's not hurting us.
So should he be taking more or less or equal amount of shots, as many as he feels, or do you want to see him take less shots, or do you want to see him even take more shots?
No, I think at this stage of the season, the worst thing he could do is change something, change his game. Like that's not, it's like use what got you here.
Yeah.
He was an effective player playing his style, and this is
Yeah.
sports. You're gonna have a bad night, you might have a bad week, and
Mm-hmm.
you hope that as a fan he digs himself out of it and gets back to his usual self. But I think his game needs to stay exactly as it is and how it has been for the whole season, really.
Yeah, and that's the mentality of this team because even DiVincenzo missing that first game winner, he then gets the ball right
Mm-hmm.
back and shoots it and makes it. It's
No hesitation.
no hesitation. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's I gotta ask, going back, so when we look at this team and we look at this matchup with Embiid still putting up 30 and everything going on with that, do you but I do believe that OG and the guys down low are holding it down with one of the best centers in the game for sure in Embiid. Do you does this, so as we move forward, I real quick just want to ask, do you think that you continue to let Embiid get 30, or does it start getting into, I don't know, like do you try to keep I mean, they are double teaming Embiid. He's still getting his 30. I don't know if he's really stoppable right now in this series, but is there anything different you do with Embiid?
I'm gonna say no, simply because we don't know how the injuries are, going to affect his game. Like, Embiid, he's such a dominant, incredible big man that
Mm-hmm.
he's like you said, he's going to get his.
Mm-hmm.
Where the injuries have hurt him have been on the defensive end and on the boards, and hey, that's to our credit, and our advantage. The offensive rebounds that we're able to get. I mean, hey, they put him out there. So Philly, they need his points. They need his presence on the court. And I think the Knicks, it's like, hey, if we're, most teams, when you're facing a dominant big man or just a really dominant, dynamic player where you recognize, hey, we can't really stop him, but we can try to contain the others.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I think that's working for the Knicks because other than Embiid and Maxey, nobody else has really stepped up for Philly. And I think that's why the Knicks are up 2-0 because the Knicks have gotten more equal contributions at the right time, whereas Philly is relying on these two guys. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm sticking with what we've been doing so far because hey, we're up 2-0.
Right, and before this series, they said be worried about like Bainham or something being their guy, I'm like, that's not who anyone's worried about. You know what I mean? Like that can't
Mm-mm.
be. I look at this series, and I know this is a Knicks podcast, but I just did not feel like it's Philly's year at all before coming into this series. And it's funny that Philly, I believe, was favored to win the series before this series started, and the disrespect for the Knicks is really there. If you want to just speak real quick on the disrespect, and maybe you've heard some, Stephen A or whatnot. I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to speak on the disrespect a little bit.
Yeah, I think I, I'm not surprised by it because no one expected the Knicks to be where they are right now. Like if we talking about the Knicks at the beginning of this season, expecting them to be the number 2 seed in the East, no way. I expected Philly, to be honest, in that spot, and the Knicks would be, I thought the Knicks were good enough to be the 4, 5, or 6 seed, but here we are as the number 2 seed. And I think to a lot of people in the media or even fans, they, if you're not a true fan, you're not really going to give the team the credit that they've earned, which is to say they are the number 2 seed, home court advantage. They're up 2-zip. What more evidence do you need? Like what happens if they sweep Philly? Are you still going to say, they're not ready yet. They need a little more time. But, like I think people, when they want to find excuses, they will find them. And they're doing a good job of finding excuses about the Knicks and why this team can't do this, can't do that. And if I'm the Knicks, I'm a diehard Knicks fan. Keep talking. I'm just going to enjoy letting them surprise people and continue to play good basketball. And even if they were to somehow lose this round against Philly, to me the season it's still a success when you consider at the beginning of the year nobody expected them to be where they are. Obviously I want them to move on and succeed, but regardless, I'm a happy Knicks fan watching the progress that they've made over the last 2, 3, 4 seasons. And I think it's just going to get better as I mean, we're missing a big piece. Imagine this team right now with Randall clicking on all cylinders. If Mitch Robinson doesn't miss 2 months or so, like what his game might look like. And this team's got really good depth. And for people who don't want to acknowledge what they've done, let it be. Right now they're proving people wrong day in and day out. And so, I'm riding with them all the way.
Yeah, and like they have such a great bench and people picking up the slack. It's funny because like you said about Randall, if he was here right now, the NBA, what I'm seeing is it's starting to turn into more who's got the big four. Like in Denver, they got Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Jokic, and Murray. And if Randall was here, we'd have a big four. So I do feel like they might have the recipe for a lot of success for the future of, the next 5 years down the line. I do want to ask, if you do think Brunson was, if he should have been in the MVP consideration, because he wasn't in that. And then I believe he was left off of Team USA or something like that as well. Is that, is there disrespect there?
I definitely felt like he earned some MVP consideration. But at the same time, like, I mean, there's a lot of good guys in the NBA putting up some big numbers. I think Brunson, for me, he's top 3. I'm sure I'm a little biased as a Knicks fan, but I thought he was a top 3 MVP candidate. He had 11, I think, 40-point games, and really has carried the Knicks offensively since Randall has been out. And he's doing it under the biggest spotlight, New York City.
Right.
What more does he need to prove? And to his credit, I watched an interview with Brunson on some podcast, and I mean, hey, he was National College Player of the Year. He's won 2 national championships, and people still doubt him. People still feel like he's not capable. I don't know if it's about height, if is he too modest. I can't put my finger on it. But I'm glad he's on my team, and I'm glad he's like the leader for this Knicks team. And there's just like with the Knicks being disrespected as a team and Brunson not getting his accolades, certain things like that, I just kind of take it with a grain of salt. He's doing the work, and he's earned my respect and the respect of a lot of people, surprised a lot of people. Is this his ceiling, or does he get better? Does he average 30 next year and shoot more efficiently and win MVP or be all NBA team? I think with his work ethic and his demeanor and personality, he's in the right place. And he's just going to continue to surprise people and excel at his position.
I agree. So last night, LeBron James had a presser after their big shocking loss. They so I'll just give you my take. LeBron and the Lakers gave up a 20-point lead. He bricked a game-winning shot, and then after the game, he's complaining about the referees and the replay. And then he actually brought up the Knicks game and he said, come on, what are we doing? I just watched the Knicks game, same deal, everything like that. Now, I do think also we're seeing a lot of the referees letting them play it so far in these playoffs, and the pace of the game it's made, the pace of the game come down a little bit. It's different than the regular season to me. But I do want to get your thoughts on, replay and how they're calling the game and consistency and just a little bit of the refereeing that you've seen and LeBron's comments.
Yeah, I've read and saw a couple of reports about the Knicks game, the Lakers game, and I got to be honest, like I am not really a fan of NBA players or coaches for that matter, coming up with excuses on the refs this and I should have got the. I mean, let's be real. Last night, if Kyle Lowry hits, I think he missed 2 free throws. Not at the same trip to the line, but I think he had 2 trips to the free throw line, if I'm not mistaken. And he missed 2 out of the 4 free throws that he would have had. He hits his free throws. The conversation is very different about the game last night. And I think there's moments in a game where you could look and say, well, hey, if your guys got that rebound, the outcome could be very different. So, when people start talking about referees and foul, like I don't really like to see or think that the referees can have that type of impact in a game where one missed call determines the winner or the loser. I don't think it's that simple. I think there are moments in the game where you could say, okay, they missed one, or they haven't been consistent with calling this particular foul or whatever the case may be. But usually, if you look at the team who's complaining, there's issues and things that they could have handled in-house to kind of give themselves a better opportunity to win that game. But they come up with excuses about the refs. I mean, come on. Like in that particular play last night, Maxey pushed Josh Hart like almost out of bounds before he darted the other way to get the ball. And I saw a really good take with Stephen A. and I can't remember the other guy's really good commentator. Well, the point that they made was, why did Kyle Lowry give Maxey the ball in that situation? Kyle Lowry's been in the league for like 18 years. And, the way they phrased it, it was like, hey, as a veteran player, you should know in that moment, if it's not an easy pass, call the timeout and, allow your team to advance the ball. So, I mean, is that more important than or less important than the referee call that was missed or a timeout that the coach was trying to get? So, and with the Lakers, the same situation. Did LeBron have to shoot that three with, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds on the clock? Why in that moment did he feel like he needed to take a three? So if he makes the shot, the refs are irrelevant. He missed the shot, so now the refs are the problem in the game. To me, that's weak. I think if your team didn't execute well enough to win the game, hey, in your press conferences, hey, we gotta step up, we gotta be a little better here and there, and we'll get them next game. Having excuses about referees, I think that's lame. Like, I'm not really a fan of that aspect of the NBA. Referees are humans. They're going to miss calls. They have replays. Sometimes even the replay, they mess up and miss a call. Are the Knicks complaining about the call that got reversed yesterday on DiVincenzo when he had the ball and then Lowry hit him in the shoulder and the head? No, well, we can make a list on referees and things that they miss, but as long as they out there doing their jobs, you got to trust that, hey, they're going to get it right most of the time. Everything else is about you and the guys wearing the same uniform as you, how you execute and how you do the things that you need to do to put yourself in a position to win. Everything outside of that realm with you, the players and the coaches, I think it's just talk, it's fluff, like trying to find excuses where there really isn't one that is making you lose the game, And if I'm like Philly last night, hey man, get that rebound. You get that offensive rebound. If Embiid is not hobbled, does he get that? He gets that rebound probably, and the series could be tied 1-1.
Yeah, yeah.
But so yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Well, they had the game in their hands. Like, so there's really, I don't think there's anyone to blame but yourself. And I don't think, also, this is so far what we're seeing with these playoffs to me is that this is not a flop. Like, the flopping is not gonna help you in these series. And I mean, Embiid, I see him flopping a lot. How is, like Josh Hart, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, he looks like he's 180 pounds soaking wet. Embiid's gonna flop off of him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like you're too big to be flopping anyway. I mean, you're gonna hurt yourself. And so I feel like there's this, we have this conversation all the time. It's like the Michael and LeBron debate. It's always like how the league has changed, and I understand that there is a difference in the game and whatnot, and players are, extremely athletic, but I do think that now we like things kind of, they kind of go in cycles sometime. And so now I almost feel like what these playoffs are representing is that you're not going to get away with flopping. I feel like there's been the league probably came down on the referees a little bit. It's probably a shock to a lot of these players. But the guys who get recognized as floppers have been flopping in these playoffs, and it's not helping them. So I mean, it's an interesting thing that we're seeing going on. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll add one last little piece about the Knicks Philly game that to me was interesting. The big play that happened last night that turned the tables. Maxey, when he has the ball, he falls to the ground and coughs it up. Josh Hart steals it from him. Hartenstein has the ball. He falls to the ground and gets the ball to his teammate. So how do you, how do you equate those two players in the similar situation, same duress, but one guy is able to find his teammate and set up this game-winning shot versus, I mean, is it experience? Is it the ball has a certain texture? I could sit here and come up with all these different excuses. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to a player's individual effort and their basketball IQ and how they are able to kind of execute under duress in certain moments. And I mean, hey, credit to Maxey. He's been playing lights out. He's been the best point guard in this series so far. But in that particular moment, when, we're talking seconds apart, outcomes are very different for two players, and then obviously, the teams that they represent. I just feel like, there's too many areas where a lot of people in basketball like to point fingers and say, "Oh, he got fouled. He should have blah 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 blah." I mean, we could pick out different spots in the game throughout every NBA game where something is missed. This guy traveled.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to get deeper about it, it's like, why do you feel like you get the call and this guy doesn't? Like, there's a little bit. I'm a star player. Maxey, a tremendous player. He just won Most Improved Player just like an hour ago. And I do believe that he's an amazing player, but I kind of go back to this, Embiid, and LeBron, and there's a lot of like, crybaby type of things going on right now. And I just, if it's the other way around, you're not saying anything, right? So I mean, let's keep it real. So I mean, it's gotta, I mean, these are just things you observe as a fan of the NBA. You know what I mean, from our perspective. And these guys, you know what I mean, they don't know what we're thinking because they're in a whole other stratosphere of their, of what's going on in their head and what their surroundings are. But for the viewer, for the people that are watching on TV and watching the press conferences, this is how you come off. So it's just very, it's interesting.
Yeah. I think some of these players just need to man up, accept the outcome of the game, move on to the next one. Stop looking for excuses. And worry about what you can control. On a basketball court or in any sport, you can control your effort and your execution. You know, that's what your coaches rely on. That's what your teammates rely on. You know, worrying about referees and missed calls, it does not help you in any way. And a lot of players end up getting fined and lose thousands of dollars because of things that they say. You know, the NBA is very tight when it comes to how you can critique and address the referees. And I understand why, because if they don't, then it's just every game somebody's whining and crying about it.
Yeah.
That's not what fans want to see.
Right, right. And I mean, there's going back to the Knicks culture and their fan base, they have a, they kind of have like a they have like a toughness about them, and that's kind of what, they say is that, what I mean, this is I feel like the Knicks culture is tough basketball. You know what I mean? And even though it's not, it's almost, like non-existent in today's game, that hasn't changed with the Knicks. And you know what I mean? Maybe that's just, the spirit of New York City, but that's, I mean, it's also interesting because the Knicks are New York City's team. Shout out to the Nets, but there's a wide difference in the two, and I feel like in their, I do know there's a lot of Brooklynites, a lot of Brooklyn fans that are Nets fans, but it just kind of seems like the Knicks, they're the heart of the city, and then the city is also worldwide. You see people cheering for the Knicks all over the world right now, so it's definitely electrifying. I do real quick. I just want to pull up the brackets, and I just want to ask you real quick, just a quick analysis of the top, like these matchups with the Knicks. What they do, how they beat them, if you think, yeah. Let me just get my bracket out here, but how the Knicks, how find a way to beat these teams, if you believe they do so. So let me just and real quick, we'll start with the Philadelphia 76ers. Can you just run down how the Knicks win out this series? How many more games do you think it goes?
I'm predicting 6 games. I think the Knicks will take it in 6. And I think Brunson comes to life. I think Embiid's lack of mobility hurts Philly like it has so far. And the Knicks, the role players just continue to contribute. And so yeah, I feel like this series is going to go 6 games, and I would love to see the Knicks win it at the Garden and advance to round 2.
Okay. So then they got to go either against the Pacers or the Bucks. What's the equation to beating one of those two teams?
I think the Bucks will take care of business with the Pacers even without Greek Freak. I think Damian Lillard, he's sort of been there before, and he's good enough to carry that team into the next round. I feel like Indiana is still a little young, talented, yes. They can score the basketball, but in the playoffs, things tend to tighten up. And so I see Milwaukee moving on. And New York versus Milwaukee, I like the Knicks' chances. Is if Greek Freak, if he's not there, supposedly he's supposed to be back, I think, by second round. If he's there, obviously the Knicks have to game plan for him, and it's going to be a big series for Hardenstein and Robinson. Um, I like the Knicks' chances. Milwaukee, I mean, they're a good team, veteran team, a lot of skilled players. I just feel like the Knicks are clicking on all cylinders right now. Even without Randall, they've been able to get it done. I think it would be a highly competitive series, dogfight, but I think the Knicks have enough to shock Milwaukee, and I think that series could go also 6, maybe 7 games. And then like if the Knicks were to move on and probably face Boston, who everybody expects, that would be interesting because the Knicks will have, kind of exhausted themselves, I think, going against 2 top tier opponents in the Eastern Conference just to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, they still got, you have energy at that point. But that would be a nice problem to talk about, is that the Knicks are in the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston, and how do they, find the stamina to get over those guys. But yeah, I'm riding with the Knicks. I feel like against Milwaukee, against Philly, to me, I look at those two teams, and I don't really see enough to say that they're just wiping the floor with anybody. The Knicks, it's going to be a challenge. The Knicks have to play their A game, but I think they're capable. That's
Yeah.
what they're showing me. Yeah.
No fear of or no fear at all of the Heat or the Cavs or Orlando. Like Knicks can hold up with any of them.
I think I mean, just looking at how they played them during the regular season, um, the Cavs are a really good team. Like
Yeah.
if out of the three you just mentioned, that's the one team that I'd be a little worried about because I think they match up really well with the Knicks as far as
Yeah.
like the type of players they have and the kind of defense they play. Um, Miami, I mean, hey, they're missing Butler and Rozier. I don't know how Miami makes up for those two guys not being there. So I'm not concerned with them. Orlando, I put them in a similar boat to Indiana, very young, talented, but that inexperience usually shows up in the postseason. With Cleveland, yeah, I think they've got guys that have a little experience and are not going to be afraid of the spotlight. So that's a matchup that would concern me. I still think the Knicks come out on top, but it wouldn't be an easy series.
Yeah. So let's say that they do play Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. What would be the hit? What would be the key factor for winning that series for the Knicks?
I think in a in a similar fashion to say Philly or even Milwaukee, with Boston, you just have to accept that Tatum is going to get his, Brown is going to get his. How do we contain the other guys so that like Derek White isn't dropping 25 or 30 on us,
Yeah.
or Porzingis, who is capable of putting up numbers. I think you think about how to contain the other guys, because again, those two guys are going to get theirs, but we don't want, the guy coming off the bench giving or dropping 20, 25 on us and not being the difference in the game. So I think they have to figure out how to contain the guys besides, Tatum, Brown, and to a certain degree, Porzingis.
Who is the biggest threats to the West right now? Would you say?
It's got to be Boston. They've played the best basketball all season long. And they look like a championship caliber basketball team. And the fact that they went to the finals, they've smelled it. They've had a taste. And it's usually those teams that, when they come back, they're even hungrier and have something to prove. And, they have the talent. And so um it pains me to say like, oh, Boston is probably going to win it all. But I'm a sports fan and I'm a realist. I think they have the pedigree. The question is, are their big dogs going to step up when they need them the most? So far, they have. So as long as that continues, I think they're the biggest threat to the West. And yeah, I feel like Denver is probably going to be that team. I mean, obviously things are still early, but when you have MVP Joker just doing his magic night in and night out, it's hard to see another team beating his team in a series. He'll lose a couple of games, of course, but I just think that he's such a dynamic player and does so much that he's not going to let his team get beat in a series.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of see it coming down to Boston and Denver, and and a perfect New York world, it's the Knicks in Denver.
It's funny, man. That is my pick. And I'm a little bit of a realist too. So I do have Denver winning it all. But I
Hmm.
think that, I'm going to have to put something down on the Knicks versus Denver. And I'll have to hedge it with the Knicks winning just a little something because the odds are going to be crazy with the sports books right now. Probably.
Yeah.
They're probably, they're worse than they were like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, so just real quick, can I just get your thoughts on OKC? Being the number one team in the West, like so young, SGA, like he might win MVP and whatnot. Is there a route where these guys win the whole thing?
Yeah, man, that like this OKC team, it reminds me of the OKC from I don't know how many years ago when they had Durant, Harden, and Westbrook. Like such a good, talented young team. And you know that young part, it really shows up in the postseason. And I feel ultimately that that's what's gonna happen with these guys. They have talent. They've shocked a lot of people with the success that they had this year. Do I see them winning a championship? No. I could see them getting to Western Conference Finals. I'm not sure how the brackets are sitting out west, but I could see them getting to the Western Conference Finals, but losing to I don't know if Denver's on the same side with them or if they're on the same side with
They're with
Minnesota
the
or what have you.
they're with the Clippers and the Mavs.
Okay. So with both of those teams, especially the Clippers, um, the experience, firepower, I can't see OKC beating that team. I think they'd have a better shot against Dallas because I don't think Dallas has enough pieces, even against OKC. But the Clippers, I see the Clippers getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think, when they right now, as far as I know, they're healthy, and when you've got Kawhi and PG-13 and Harden, and Westbrook, you know what they're capable of, and they've kind of been there, done that. So OKC, I think if they can keep that team together for the next 2, 3 seasons, maybe there's a trade that boosts their stock a little bit. But I just feel like as a NBA team, they're still wearing diapers, and those teams don't usually bring home the crown.
Yeah. So I mean, when I look at the West, that OKC and New Orleans game, it went the distance. It was a close game. Zion was unhealthy, or he wasn't there. He could come back in a few weeks. I kind of see that series going a while. And it's just because New Orleans has got a lot of dog in them. Like they fight hard.
Mhm.
And the inexperience factor is always now something that's very pivotal in my mind when it comes to these games, is the experience of being there. I mean, you see it with teams and you see it with individual players, really coming up and playing well for a team. So it's and then when I also look at the Clippers, and I mean the West is so stacked still. It's like crazy when you look at the Clippers, and Kawhi's coming back tonight, and I still love the Mavs. I think that they got so many good players, and of course, Phoenix and the Wolves got a bunch of great players, and the Lakers and Denver was so close. So the West is so tight. But who do you think won MVP this year? Who do you think is the most valuable player?
That it's a little tough for me in the sense that obviously I can put in a vote for Brunson because he's got numbers, but also as a Knicks fan, I've seen him play more. The other guys that are on the list, for me to really give that nod and say, I think this guy is MVP, I'd want to be able to say I've seen him live in games, at least, maybe a dozen times. And, the other guys who I know by statistics are up there, Joker, SGA, uh, the guy from
Luca,
Dallas, Luca. I know the
Giannis.
number. Yeah, like I know the numbers are there, but
Mhm.
I just haven't seen them playing enough on a day in, day out basis to say like, oh, I think this guy is definite. Like if we just go on numbers, then SGA I think is probably statistically, or Joker. I'm assuming if you want to give the more like he's Mr. Triple Double. So if it's just about numbers, then just give Joker the trophy and let's be done with it. But usually, when people who have these votes, they look for intangibles that separate this guy from the other guy, because hey, these guys are elite top tier players. Like they're gonna give you statistics every night, but this guy maybe he's his leadership qualities might put him a step ahead of the other candidates, or this guy is the floor general. And so sometimes the intangibles end up deciding along with the numbers. So for me, like it's hard to say who's most deserving, but just because I haven't seen the other players play enough. So I'm gonna just stick with my hometown guy, Brunson, because his numbers have been elite. He's been a big reason and part of his team's success. And if that's not qualifications for MVP, then what is?
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I want to just give you some closing words on the Knicks, and I'll just say real quick, I hope these guys take it the distance. I hope Randall comes back at the end and we keep shocking the world, and New York City is electric.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you just want to drop some closing words and real quick.
Yeah, man. Thanks again for having me. I love talking about sports, especially my New York Knicks. It's been it's been a journey, uh, you know, being a Knicks fan for so many years and experiencing the lows. And now that we have some nice momentum, I hope that they just continue to build on it. And um, for me, this season has already been a success. If it were to come to an end with this series, I'd still be a happy Knicks fan. But obviously, I want more than this first round of the playoffs. So I'm rooting for them hard, because I think when New York and the Knicks are winning and bringing a championship to a city like this, it's good for the NBA. It's good for the sport, and so I know I'm not alone when I say, like, the Knicks winning, if they find a way to just to get to the finals, let alone win it, it'd be one of the biggest headlines I think in sports history, for this team that no one has really taken seriously, but yet still here we are. And just the fact that we're able to have a conversation about them possibly having that type of success, it's a great thing, I think, for basketball. And as a Knicks fan, I love it. So, yeah, I'm always happy to talk about them and see them do good. It's been so long since they won the championship. I'd like to see that drought end in my lifetime. And why not this year?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why
You
not this
you
year?
you want to plug anything real quick?
Well, for anybody that lives in New York, if you like to go out, have some drinks, enjoy a good meal. I DJ at some really cool lounges, mostly hotel lounges. I play vinyl. I do occasional like laptop digital sets, but my IG page is OBAHNYC. Obah NYC. That's where I post my invites. Feel free to check me out. And like I said, if you're ever out and about in New York City and looking for a cool place to hang out or go on a date or chill with some friends, look me up. I think you might enjoy it.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was great. I can't, I'm just so happy. I got so much great content. A bunch of clips I get to make now for the Knicks fans on the
Nice.
Twitter and for X and for IG and social media. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And let's go Knicks. This is I'm Parlay Hunter at Parlay Hunter on Instagram, Bro Media at Bro Media. Follow us on all socials. Thank you, and we're signing out. Peace.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.